So, Emma, what's happening today?
Today we have some special guests share with us their experience of fostering mainly toddlers who are going to help advise us, and they have lots of experience about how to maybe help manage certain behaviours.
Welcome back to the Blanket Fort here in the Crippen household, this cosy corner of the internet where it's time to put in your headphones, grab a moment to unwind and join with other parents to chat about our experiences of raising children. Supporting each other in a non-judgmental way, whether you have a baby, toddler, one child or more. We're your co-hosts on this relentless parenting journey. I'm Elliot, husband to Emma, who's sat across from me there. Factoid for today, my favourite food is probably cheesy pasta or anything sweet, really. I'm a dessert person.
And I'm Emma. My favourite food is dumpling stew. And I'm the opposite. I generally like savoury food. Don't really have much of a sweet tooth. So yeah, and anything meaty is mainly my go-to. That's my favourite thing.
There you go, something about us. And this is a special episode today. We've got two guests on. Really interesting conversation. We're very glad that we had Nigel and Sue join us. So stay tuned for some excellent conversation and tips and tricks from them. It's a really good episode. Highly recommend it.
Da-da-da-da! Parenting achievement time!
So a parenting fail story from us this week. We've been having fun and games with Lily bringing back items from nursery that she's smuggled away in her pockets and in her hat. Stealing things that she wasn't meant to bring home. I mean, the nursery don't seem to mind particularly. We do try and send them back.
I do bring the stuff back.
Yeah. We thought we'd quickly mention, though, this kind of relatable moment maybe, whether if your toddler also has this, if they're at nursery or any kind of education setting, they go somewhere for childcare, do they smuggle things away sneakily?
And it only started about a week ago. We came home with two of these letters, like they're learning to write, two of these little letters in her pocket. And then we couldn't stop laughing. The next day she came back. She came all the way home. She said to Baba, "I've got another one." And he was going, "Another one?" And she was like, "Come look."
And she was showing me in her coat pocket. She was like, "I've got more." And she was producing more and more of these plastic little letter shapes from her pocket. And I was like, "Lily, we told you yesterday when you brought home the other ones that we had to give them back." And she's brought more home. She also smuggled...
Like she was so proud of it. Yes. Like, come see what I got.
Come see what I brought home. She smuggled a plastic spider home. That was part of the Halloween decorations or whatever they were doing at nursery to do with kind of Halloween. She also came home one day and she had her drawings that she'd drawn on bits of paper stuffed in a hat. And so she came home, took her hat off and was like, "Look, I've got my drawings in the hat." And we were like, "What? Why? I'm sure they let you bring your drawings home. Why did you need to hide them in your hat?"
They hang them up and then they hand them to you as you leave. But apparently she thought a good place to keep them was a hat.
There we go. So
I do want to say we have told her stealing is wrong.
Yeah, it's now an ongoing conversation about how we try and impart this wisdom that maybe you shouldn't take things
from nursery. Yeah.
We've not had much success at returning the items either. But anyway, there's a parenting fail from us this week.
Yeah.
Do let us know if it sounds familiar. We'd love to know if your toddler or child also does this or has done this in the past, or if
you're a fellow little thief living in your house.
Yeah, and it's not too bad being nursery in that, it's not like a shop or something where
it hasn't expanded to outside of nursery
where
yet.
you actually have to pay for the things, so it's not proper theft. Right, well, before we dive into our conversation with Nigel and Sue today, just to provide some context and introductions to that, we kind of know Nigel through my work and through the church. He's listened to some of our podcast episodes, and particularly we're on quite a similar page with the kind of school and flexi schooling education stuff. We did an episode on chatting about that, and we touched base and we said it would be interesting to have a conversation. We mention it in a moment when we get into it, but they've gone through a journey of fostering, and that's really interesting in itself and that whole experience, but also what they've learned through having, fostering lots of toddlers and under fives, and some of their tips and tricks for kind of managing all sorts of things, kind of emotions, behaviour, how we say no to things, how we talk to children. Loads of really good stuff in there, kind of around the theme of kind of gentle parenting, but also kind of much broader than that as well, a kind of holistic approach to how we do discipline and different ideas about what that looked like. And lots of things that we've learned from this conversation.
Yeah, loads of stuff. I'll be listening back to it myself, trying to remember everything that was said.
Packed full of loads of great stuff. So I hope you enjoy it. We really enjoyed it, and we'll meet you back at the other side of the conversation just to wrap things up. But here we go. Grab your changing bag and your wipes before you head out the door, and let's jump into the conversation. Welcome, and thank you very much for joining us on our podcast, our little podcast here, chatting about parenting, and particularly for us kind of toddlers and babies and under fives and things like that. Do you want to introduce yourselves and kind of what your experience and context is?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm Nigel Pimlott. I recently semi-retired. I do some consultancy stuff, but I used to work for youth work organisations and the church. 5-6 years ago, I knew absolutely nothing about parenting under fives, but we then decided to become foster carers. And I know I'm an expert. No, I'm not. It was a really steep learning curve where we had a really challenging journey, but we learned lots on the way, and we just thought it might be good to chat about some of that, if that might help some of your listeners.
I'm Sue Pimlott, married to Nigel, so similar journey. I've got a background in primary school teaching, working in alternative provision and supporting children with special educational needs, particularly social, emotional, mental health difficulties, which can present as challenging behaviour. So I've had a bit of experience through the fostering, but also through kind of work life as well.
What we always like to do is include other voices on the podcast that can share other stories, and particularly kind of experiences that either we don't have, or expertise that we don't have, or ways of just, expanding some of our knowledge. And but so really fascinated by this conversation, particularly for us. I think at the moment we're
going through a challenging time.
We're struggling a little bit, just the nature of I don't know, where we are with Lily, who's 3.5, and kind of going through a kind of tantrum phase.
I think she's very aware the baby's coming soon, and that means less attention. So she's trying to find ways of getting more and more attention, but not necessarily the best way.
As well, like the kind of foster journey as well, that's really interesting, because again, it's a different angle that we've not had any experience of. I don't know, how would you sum up your kind of journey and experience with fostering?
I think it is slightly different just because of the life experience that the children have had prior to coming to us. So I was very much kind of alongside my sister when she was parenting my nephews, and kind of, stayed with her and was around that kind of parenting then. But actually with children who were in foster care, it's much more of a therapeutic approach. So that was another part of our learning curve, was kind of almost relearning some of the parenting models we had seen from friends and family, actually then having to tweak it to do it slightly differently. So that was quite interesting, and we did quite a lot of reflection in the evenings, kind of saying, well, that didn't quite work today, what should we try tomorrow? So those kind of conversations. But there was some really good books that we read about therapeutic parenting, and that was quite helpful for us in that part of the journey.
Yeah, I think one of my reflections is we've got our own children, sadly, and however much you love and care for those who you're fostering, they're not your children, they're someone else's. It's just a massive responsibility looking after someone else's children is one of my reflections, and the pain and struggle of life is very stark for those, and you try and make the best of it you can. I think the joy for us, the other side of that equation, is the last little girl we fostered. We're still heavily involved in her life, and she comes and stays with us every other weekend, and that's just been fantastic, really. We don't know where it will go.
how long that
Yeah.
lasts for.
It's always, but yeah, she's just a delight, and we just count it as a privilege, really, that we've been able to do that. I think it worked for us, it works for her, and it works for the family members she lives with. But yeah, it's difficult. It's a difficult scenario. It's underfunded. It's chaotic. It's kind of slightly dysfunctional. People don't always make good decisions because they haven't got the resource capacity to make good decisions. So there's a lot of crisis management, which I think doesn't really help the children in the way that it was adequately resourced we'd be able to do, really.
I think because of all of those things, we really wanted to get it right. And, we didn't always get it right, but we wanted to. I think we really strove to do that because of the situations that the children were in.
How did you kind of come to the decision that it was the route that you wanted to explore? And would you, I mean, probably not for our listeners, but, would you recommend others kind of explore fostering? And
yeah, that's a difficult question.
Having the children was the joyous bit. It was really hard work, but that was kind of the joyous bit. And particularly sort of, we fostered under 5, so you see all those amazing milestones. You're part of that, and that's that's a real joy to kind of behold them and crawling and standing, taking the first steps, weaning, having the first taste of real food and all that, sleeping through the night. Well, we didn't get much of that, but it's kind of, those milestones were brilliant. Seeing the children develop as well was really great. There's a lot of tensions. You as a foster carer, you're not kind of seen as very important, so you're kind of pulled in lots of different directions, and you just have to kind of do what you're told, really. So there might be little groups that you want to take the children to, but actually you've got to fit in with the contact time with the family because that's the most important thing. So there's lots of pulls, and social care, as Nigel said, it is massively underfunded and in crisis. So some of those relationships there with the social workers were difficult because they're tricky to get hold of and they have their own kind of priorities. I think it just depends on the kind of person you are. And I think one of the hardest things, despite all those tensions, was, we signed up for short-term fostering, which on the website, it was sort of, 3 months-ish. But all our children were with us for around a year. And you develop those, especially because they're young and they rely on you for all their needs at that age. That saying goodbye is so hard, it's an investment, really. And that, they're going on to the next steps, and that's our job, was to prepare them for those next steps. But you're so invested in them, that's a really difficult part.
I think I'd want to qualify the question as to whether I'd recommend it. It's not well paid unless you go through an agency with high demand children. The idea of you working, you've got under 5s, I don't think is possible because, as Sue said, you have to do contact, you have to go to many meetings, you have to do lots of training. So you need really deep pockets to subsidise, really. Some carers have several children, which is the way they make it work. The most we had was 2 at a time. So yeah, I think it's a real tricky question as to whether I'd recommend it or not. Our social worker was fantastic. She was old school, just couldn't have wished for someone better. And without her, we'd have just stopped. I'm giving you a long waffly answer. There's lots of dynamics in the mix as to whether I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And there's some friends I've got who have, admittedly, they're not looking after under 5s. They're older children. They've moved house and bought a bigger house, so it becomes almost like a mini children's home. And hats off to them. I don't know how they handle that, but that's their kind of calling, if you like, their vocation.
It's just such a interesting insight into a whole area that I know nothing about, really. And but I mean, from our perspective, I'm super impressed in terms of it's a challenge for us with an under 5 who's our own and with us all the time, and trying to imagine kind of the experience of that context is even, it's hats off to you. It's incredible. We've talked a little bit on our podcast before, but not in great detail. I mean, we're quite a fan of the whole kind of gentle parenting type approach. But or
at least we try our best.
We've been very open that we're not great at kind of sticking to things, or we flex a lot depending on how we're coping. And so we have often slipped into doing things like timeouts and particularly I think kind of reward based things. Again, we kind of know that isn't a great approach, or like in our heads we're never quite sure about it or what the alternative is, but you kind of just sometimes find yourself there. We went through, and it's still kind of a big challenge for us for a long time, around clothes and getting dressed. One of our early episodes we did was when Lily was kind of around 2 when we started doing the podcast, and we went through a couple of weeks, I think, where she just wouldn't wear any clothes. It was just like naked. Trying to get anything on her was a massive challenge.
Well, so we just had like 2 weeks indoors basically. I'm like, can't take you out like this. And when I do take you out, you just get naked. So
these days it's a lot better, and you can kind of, she's of an age where you can reason with her a bit more, but it's still
she no longer likes to get naked. It's more she has a different preference for certain clothes.
So it's often a kind of to and fro on it every morning, working out what can we encourage her to wear, or will she wear a coat when we leave the house? Will she wear appropriate shoes, particularly going into winter, because she wants to wear flip-flops everywhere? What would be your thoughts on approaching kind of reasoning with a illogical toddler?
It is really tricky. One of the things that we used with 3.5-year-old that we fostered was she really struggled with having demands put on her, so asking her to do things. So we would just tweak the language, and in the morning I would put her clothes out on a chair and just say, your clothes are waiting for you. And then, so it wasn't kind of going, right, let's get ready, or putting that pressure on her. It was just, your clothes are ready for you, come downstairs, when you're dressed. So there was that aspect to it. We do kind of talk a bit about keeping them safe and warm as well, don't we? So, your clothes are there to keep you safe and warm. Another thing that sometimes works well with children is like a little photo story, having photos of maybe Lily wearing her shoes, or a photo of just tip part of a child. So when it's cold, these are the clothes we wear. And just kind of going through it almost like a bedtime story. When we go to the shops, we put on our coat, and you can sometimes have like pictures by the door or wherever it is that you kind of are leaving the house by, as kind of a checklist of things to do. But it's just that getting it over, isn't it? In a sort of pictures sometimes work quite well, and photos. But this is when we go outside in the winter, these are the shoes we wear. When we go outside in the summer, these are the shoes we wear, and that kind of thing. So it's that kind of preempting it. So you're not kind of challenging in the moment, but that's kind of an ongoing narrative.
Yeah, my background is in youth work, so I'm committed to participation and empowerment. So I probably give the little ones too much choice. Sue's always going, stop giving them a choice. But I might say, do you want to wear this coat or that coat? So it's kind of narrowing it down a little bit. The little girl who comes and stays with us, she's 2.5. It always seems to work when we say we need to keep you safe. I don't know the psychology of that 2.5-year-old, but obviously the fostering, that's really important. But just saying that does seem to just soften the resistance sometimes. We need to keep you safe, and we need to keep you warm, or we need to do this or do that. And how or why that works, but it just seems to just kind of diffuse the potential conflict, really. So I use that a lot when I'm struggling.
But yeah, the two choices is fine. Like is when it gets more than 2, I think. But yeah, 2 choices is good, because Because actually, if she's got 2 pairs of winter shoes or 2 coats, then as long as she's wearing one of them, or or 2 jumpers, and sometimes, even the night before, we could say, tomorrow, we're going to be going out and go to the playground, so we'll need some warm clothes for that. Which jumper shall we put out ready for tomorrow? And she can be part of choosing that. So it's that kind of participation as well.
I know you mentioned it. It is hard when you're tired and you've got things going on, but we are passionate about the routine. The routine is, we're almost slaves to that routine. Everything's timed to within a few minutes. We'll give notice, it's going out time in 5 minutes. We need to get our shoes out. We need to do so. We keep that rhythm all the time, even though at times you just want to go, forget it. But we are kind of passionately embedded in that whole kind of way of being, really.
Yeah, because that's particularly for when children are being fostered. That sense of emotional safety is really key. So boundaries and routine help to keep children safe. And so we were really trying to stick to this, as Nigel said, because it is that feeling of safety which then helps them to sort of react better, I guess, to when there is changes or when something's about to happen.
It's one of those things where it's very easy to kind of forget to explain to your children why they're doing something, not just that we have to do it.
I've taken to showing her the weather app when sometimes if we sit there and she goes, but it's not going to rain, and I go, well, it says it's going to rain, let's look at the app. And sometimes that helps persuade her, because she can see there's a rain cloud and she goes, oh, okay, it is going to rain. I will accept it.
I like that. That's nice. That's good.
We do a lot of, we try to do a lot of modelling where basically we know Lee loves to kind of copy whatever you're doing. So we've bought some matching sets of wellies things that you can wear. So you kind of
she's like, oh, well, I like mummy's wellies.
Lily's wearing her wellies today. You want to wear your matching ones, and that has worked quite well. Not that she ever wants to wear matching things with me, so I don't know what I do.
You're by yourself.
And I think we need to get better at narrowing down some of the choices.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely to blame for that. I'm like, what would you like to wear? Like, the world's your oyster. These are all your clothes. What would you like?
I'm with you on that one. That's a great one.
And it's always like, well, now she wants a very precise item that she can remember she wore last week, and we have no idea if it's in the wash or not. And then you're hurriedly going through going, oh my goodness, where's that one blue dress that she said she really wanted to wear today?
Sometimes when small children are in that heightened state, when they might be having a tantrum about not wanting to wear shoes, reducing the amount of words is really good, because when they're in that kind of tantrum state, the thinking part of their brain isn't working. It's the emotions are taking over. So reducing the number of words means the brain hasn't got to work so hard. Or even just using pictures, and you could just draw on a bit of paper a picture of a wellies and a picture of some other shoes, and just get to the point that it's time to go out now. We need to put on shoes. Which shoes? These ones or these ones? Thank you. And saying thank you at the end of your request as well, rather than please, kind of almost gives them that assumption that they're going to do it. You know what I mean? So
that's a good point. Yeah.
Please, can you choose your shoes? Right, do you want the boots or the shoes? You choose. Thank you. And it's kind of that done deal almost. So that's just another little thing to think about when children are in that height of state, because the under fives, they're often the smallest things, and it gets them upset, doesn't it? But it's just remembering that less words in those moments, rather than, oh, it's ever so rainy today outside, while they're crying away. Oh, it's ever so rainy. I think it's going to get worse. Rather than, oh, I think the wellies will be better because Emma, because you did it, and it's just too much information. So something to bear in mind.
And the other thing too, because she's loads better at it than me, is we try not to in those moments of tension, we try not to repeat an instruction or a request until we've counted 8
in our heads.
So right, it's time to get the shoes. We wouldn't say that again for like 8 seconds.
Because it's about processing the instruction. And then sometimes if you repeat it with different words, then that becomes a new instruction. So it's if you do repeat it, just using the exact same words, because then they haven't got to rethink it.
Right. I think we've kind of picked up in various places, but talking to you as well, and kind of before recording as well, that kind of importance of language and the way we talk to toddlers, especially. Yeah, to some extent, it feels almost a bit daunting, the kind of minefield of working out what should I be saying and what's helpful to say. And it feels like the advice often changes quite a lot.
You're sometimes tempted just to do what like happened when you were little. So like my parents were like, well, if you don't take a coat, you're just going to be cold.
Yeah.
And sometimes I almost go into that mentality of, well, fine. If you're just going to be cold then. And I'm like, no, but I don't want her to be cold. I'd like her to wear a coat. And I would be like, no, don't just drop into what like I was told. Try and think for yourself.
So I just wondered if there were any other kind of tips around language.
I think sometimes rather than saying just no, because sometimes that can make them panic that it's going to be never, is kind of, it might be saying, when we've done this, then we will do that. Some things are just a no. That's just life. But rather than if they ask for something and you say, well, no, it's kind of telling them when that thing is going to happen. So it might be just about to sit down for tea and they want to go outside. So it's not just, no, you can't go outside because then you get the tantrum and then they won't eat tea. But it might be, well, when you've had tea, then you can have 5 minutes outside on your trampoline, or perhaps not on the trampoline after tea. But it's that kind of thing. Or when we've had tea and then you've had your sleep, then you can go outside tomorrow morning. So it's that kind of not putting up that kind of almost that panic for them, which then gets them upset, because there's a lot of toddler behaviour is about control, that need for control, isn't it? So because that's all they've got. So it's just helping them to regain that control over the situation. That, oh, actually, I can go outside. It's just not right now. So with the sort of behaviours, just asking them what you want them to do rather than what you don't want them to do. Because again, that's a language and they've got to process, do things and what you don't want them to do. So it's just kind of saying what it is you want them to be doing. That's a really useful thing. Yeah.
Yeah, Sue hinted at it earlier. We depersonalize a lot of things. So I think Sue said earlier, your coat's waiting for you, your tea's waiting for you, the carrots are waiting for you. So it's not you need to do this. It's kind of making the object the focus really is one language thing we use a lot.
Yeah.
And I think another thing we learned with particularly one little girl is when she left nursery, we didn't speak much. We didn't say, oh, what have you done today? Was it a good time? What have you drawn? And we kind of just left the space because she put all her energy into coping with nursery and was in a heightened, exhausted, probably just like some of us are who are introverts after people. I need my space. And so we'd leave that space. And then over tea, we might say, oh, did you have a good time today? So we're just creating an environment where we're not asking too many things in the moment about what's gone on. And often we'd be met with blanks after the nursery, whereas over tea we get the full story about what went on. And that just became language, a much better use of language from our point of view and the little girls.
And it was about building relationships, because what Nigel hasn't said is when we'd walk home from the nursery and Nigel would pretend to be the Gruffalo and he would hide behind like gateposts in people's drives and jump out. And she loved that because that's just what she needed. She just needed that relational aspect when she'd been at nursery and it had taken all her energy to try and do what she was supposed to be doing. And then when we got in, she'd sit on the sofa, on her sofa was what she go with her sofa, and watch TV, and whatever it was, 20 minutes. She just needed that space, but the relational aspect as well was so important. I think that we didn't just kind of walk home in silence.
I think the other thing we do a lot language wise is I don't know what the technical term is, we over talk. So I'll say, oh, Sue, I think it's time to have our tea now. What do you think, Sue? Do you think it'd be a good idea to have our tea? So we're not addressing Lily in your case or the children we're looking at, talking over them, because we're trying to create an expectation of what's going to happen next, to defuse and to, oh, I'm going to put my coat on, Sue. Are you going to put your coat on, Sue? And again, it doesn't always work. I'm not, life's life, but I think it does have some impact that it's kind of just creating a different language environment rather than saying, come on, put your coat on. I'm putting my coat on. Sue, are you putting your coat on? We're all putting our coats on type scenario.
Yeah. Again, it's that taking away the demands, but actually they're tuning into what's needed or what's about to happen. So it's quite a useful little thing. Lots of praise as well. I think we praise lots of things, don't we, when we see them with the children. Again, sometimes it's dependent on the children that we've had, because some of the children who come into care get very embarrassed or they feel shame quite a lot, and so overpraising them can sometimes make them withdraw or just feel like, oh, you don't understand me because I'm not like that. So sometimes we'll use that over talk in sort of saying how well they're doing something, but without it making them feel uncomfortable. So that's been useful. When we go to the park, a whole kind of, or leaving somewhere that the children like, that sometimes that's been a challenge, hasn't it? So we've always done the whole, say goodbye to the slide and say goodbye to the swings. And give them that pre-warning as well. So you might be on the swing, right, we're going to have a few more push on here on the swing, then we'll get off and then it'll be time to go. Or 5 more minutes or 1 more minute, just that pre-warning, and then, right, it's time to say goodbye. Now, it does work well, but that doesn't mean that there aren't tears. But we don't kind of give in, because it's, again, about those boundaries. So Will might walk with a little girl and she's like, crying away. Bye, my slide. Bye, my slide. And she's so crying. But it is that important thing of walking with them, because that's what we've said is going to happen, and so it's important that kind of is what happens. So by the time we're in the car, she's usually okay, isn't she? And we use distraction a lot as well. So maybe in those scenarios, do you know what? Why don't you carry the ball to the car? If we've got the Peppa Pig ball with us. And so it's that kind of distraction. And we use that quite a lot, sort of generally, don't we? Empathy is another one. Even with them at that young age, just letting them know that, it must be really upsetting for them to have to leave. It's so disappointing we've got to leave the park. I know you didn't really want to come shopping. I don't understand that, but you know what? Let's have a cuddle, and later on we're going to do X, Y, and Z. So that just you saying, I understand you're feeling really disappointed, I understand you're feeling really upset, does something to help with the calming as well. So that's been something we use as well.
You were saying about kind of saying, no, we can't do that right now, but this is what we're going to do later, or various versions of that. In my head, I'm thinking that a lot of that so easily slips into kind of promising something good to try and distract them from what's going on, or, offering some sort of reward for behaving well now, saying, we can have an ice cream when we get home if you just walk home with us quietly.
I don't think we see it as a reward. It's just being clear and honest about what's going to happen next. So it's about moving, it's about diffusing the moment with what's going to happen next. So it's not if you do this good thing will happen later. It's just setting out that routine in a really clear way. And I guess, again, I don't know, but psychologically, it's just to give the little one some hope in that moment that there's something else beyond this immediate distress. That's in very simple terms. So we're not saying if you behave now and leave the park, this good thing will happen later. We're just saying we're finished with the park now. We're now going to do this, and then later this is what's going to happen. So it's those kind of things, really. One of the things which just come to mind as we've chatting, we've noticed this slightly off tangent, but again, it's just how important some of these things are. If we meet family and have a meal out, we've noticed a couple of times, that the waiter or the waitress will come and say, "What do you want to drink?" And we'll all order our drinks, and our little one will have her bottle, but she's burst into tears when the drinks arrive because there isn't a specific drink for her. So now we've started to say, "Can we have a glass and a straw?" And we'll give her a little bit of apple juice, or and as she gets older, she'll have her own little apple juice. And I'm just telling that story because I think we underestimate how the feelings might be going on in the moment. And so we're not trying to reward something, we're just trying to understand what might be happening and to get a handle on how we might be feeling in those. We've learned to cope perhaps as adults, but it's just helping transitions is perhaps a good word from one thing to the next in a way which is not based around crisis or tantrum and stuff.
There seems to be more of a shift towards kind of relational sense of trying to understand our children as, little humans that have their own needs and emotional, and trying to be with them. Some of the kind of parenting norms have been about seeing children as just expecting good behaviour because they're children, they will do what we say. And
I was going to say also, Lily's got a very big sense of equality. So like, if you've got something, she's like, well, why wouldn't, like with the drink situation, of course you would have a drink because everybody else is getting a drink. And it's quite useful in the car now because I'm like, well, everybody has to wear a seatbelt. So it's not just you. We all have to do it. But it is a struggle because at some point I'm like, but adults can do things that you can't do. And I know that seems unfair because you're very much about that things should be fair for everybody.
Yeah.
But I think we know so much more now about how the brain works and how we develop as people. And it's been a real steep learning curve to understand some of that. And perhaps some of the is a more normal for you, but we've touched on it before, you're influenced by how you're brought up and your parents. And I've just rejected so much of some of those things because our understandings changed and we've to unlearn and relearn. And, sometimes Sue will say to me after something, probably better if you hadn't have done that. And I'll like, yeah, okay, fair comment. Because we're all on that journey of learning and we understand more about who we are, wonderful people that we are.
Yeah, and I think one of the things when we were fostering Sue, it was a steep learning curve for us. But in one of the books, it talked about the fact that, if there are two of you, that sometimes, it is easy to get drawn into, especially if it's like a toddler's having a tantrum and they're kind of screaming at you. You're very heightened in that. But it was actually about taking a breath and being able to walk away and then the other person coming in. And not necessarily having a different message so that, they're not playing you off, but just to give you that breath so that you reduce those times when you say things that you wish you hadn't said or you do things that you wish. And I think that it was nice to read that actually you had permission to do that. That was an okay thing to do. And I think that was, that was quite helpful, really.
Yeah, I think we have that sometimes with like tone. So I can tell Elliot if he's getting with straight, I'm like, I don't think that tone might not be helping. maybe let's switch and let's try and say it, because like I know he's trying to calm him down, but because he's saying it in quite like a angsty way, I'm like, that's not going to help her calm down. But it's been interesting.
I get the look, Elliot, across the room. That's what I get. I get one of those. Yeah, I go, okay, yeah, I understand.
It's quite interesting because obviously now my hormones are all over. We're having to switch positions where he's like, do you want me to take over? And I'm like, yes, I don't know if I could deal with this right now.
Yeah,
I think things like you talked earlier about timeouts. I think those things are interesting. Really, we've occasionally done it, but we've not done it in a way which excludes the children. So I remember we did have some really difficult times with one 3.5, 4-year-old, and her timeouts, I used to sit with her on the sofa. We'd just sit in silence. So we weren't shaming and ostracizing, but we were saying, no, this behaviour's not acceptable now. We need to just pause. We need to take some time. And you could almost feel sometimes, if it was like a graph, you could feel the tension drift away in the silence. And at some point, they would test whether they could start playing with their toys again. And sometimes you'd say, no, we just need to sit a bit and just think about what's happened. Then it would become very calm after a while. And I'm talking sometimes 30 minutes now, just that silent. I wouldn't want to do it in a way which brought shame and alienation, which I know is really difficult, but that's just our approach.
So those times, and a lot of times it was shorter than that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It might have been a few minutes, and sometimes it was to break a cycle of. So it might have been at meal time where something that she'd had the previous week you put in front of her. I don't like that. I'm not eating it, and forkfuls might start to go off the plate, and so where we ate is in the same room as where the sofas are, and so we'd just have some time away from the table. One of us would sit with her. Now, when she was like that, she didn't want you to sit right next to her, but as she was calming, you'd move a little bit along. And we always finished those times with a cuddle, didn't we? So, if she had a bit of space away from a situation, we always finished it with a cuddle to make sure, that relationship was repaired. But yeah, no, it was never really time out. It was more time away from a situation. And we used to do it was like a picture of a penguin, and you could trace it around, and you breathed in for one bit and out for another bit. And she really enjoyed doing that as part of that calming, and we called it a penguin breathing. And she would do that, and that would just really help with her calmness. So that was really interesting, because as I just said, a lot of the children that will come into care, have experienced that shame, and the time out is another of those shame things. And it's really hard for a young child to kind of reflect on what they've done. They kind of need someone to do that with them. So I think we felt it didn't really achieve anything to kind of sit on the bottom step or whatever it is that people have done in the past.
We talked earlier about generational differences. When I've explained this to other people, they've said, oh, you don't have any boundaries and you're a soft touch then. And we have to say, no, that's not the case. We talk a lot about natural consequences. Yeah. So if we've taken up the time allocated in the day because we've needed that time out things, it means we can't watch telly because, it's now time for bed, for example. So it's not like saying, oh, yeah, do what you want, get away with it. It's kind of saying, because we've made this choice, it means we now can't do this, And so I think that those boundaries it's just a different way of looking at boundaries, which I think the children find really helpful. Yeah,
I mean, it's like trying to keep things, like any of those consequences, within the day rather than carrying it over, because young children don't understand, they haven't got an understanding of time in the same way that we have. So if something had happened on one day, that consequence you try and keep within the same day rather than, well, tomorrow we won't be able to do this. And there's no incentive for them to get up and do the right thing in the morning, because they're not going to be doing what they want to do. So again, that it's, and sometimes it was like if a toy had been broken, the consequences, you won't be able to play with it anymore. So it wasn't. It needed to be an extra punishment for that, because that in that sense was their punishment, wasn't it? Wouldn't be able to play with it anymore. So so it was very much about those natural logical consequences. We
perhaps bring some of the things we talked about together. So if we sit with your example of not wanting clothes, I might say, hey Sue, if we don't get ready soon, we won't have time to go to the park. What do you think, Sue? Do you think we should get ready? And so you're building in that kind of process as a holistic approach to it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, really good stuff. We're quite similar, I think, with timeouts and things.
Yeah.
It's not a punishment. It's more
it's not
once things
you've been going, oh, should we breathe? And you go, I don't want to breathe. Go for quiet minute.
Yeah,
so clearly
a way to calm down.
Yeah, because with her, it seems to be she gets so heightened. She doesn't want a hug. She doesn't want to do breathing. She just wants to take herself away for a moment to kind of almost self-regulate how she's feeling.
Yeah.
And then you have to go look at her and go, "You feeling a bit better now?" And then she'll come back in and do a hug. But I don't know, it's too much when I'm like, "Do you want a hug? Do you want to breathe? Should we try and do breaths?"
Oh.
But we had a big discussion about time out, didn't we? Because my sister in France, her son in school was made stand in the corner at the front of the class. And she basically completely lost it, being like, "That's really not on."
I just know from all my work with adults, there's way too many adults whose whole lives are tainted by some of those negative early childhood experiences. And, they're held back, their confidence. They might be suffering from imposter syndrome. They might never have got over that humiliation. They might be living with shame. Or it's just, the list goes on and on and on, really. So I just think all of those things, you're on a bit of dodgy ground if that's the approach. Not everyone. Some people are more resilient, but for some people, one incident shapes their whole future. And I'm not overstating that. I countless stories where that's happened, and I think that's really sad. I'm sure we get stuff wrong, but the more we can do what we think's the right thing, I think.
Yeah,
me is my goal.
Yeah, that's
right.
Yeah,
and it's about how I want to be treated. That's What would I like in this moment?
Yeah,
is always, I think.
Do you have any recommendations of where people could go to kind of, if they want to learn more, or if this is a topic that's of interest?
Have you read the Kate Silverton book? There's no such word as naughty or something like that. It's quite an interesting book to read because that is particularly aimed at parents in the under fives, and it does talk a bit more about the brain and how toddler brains work and our reactions to that, and how we can develop them to be more helpful. So that's quite a nice starting point for sort of something to read.
I like, it's getting a bit geeky, but I like family systems theory. If people are really interested in checking that out, it's not just about children that, but it's about how we firefight and how we manage situations and how we respond. And I think having that understanding that we are all different and we all react in different ways, I've just found really, really helpful. It's a big topic, family systems theory, but if you can find a simple, I'm a big fan of these 4-minute video animations. That's kind of thing. That things like that. Just I find really, I'd just recommend people perhaps take a look at that. Really, again, YouTube's a great resource. You have to be wise about sources, but understanding some children are don't like demands put on them. So just checking out something what that demand avoidance kind of thing might look like. There's obviously a lot in the news about well-being and people on the autistic spectrum and neurodiversity. I think, again, just increasing your understanding around those. It's about checking that out. What does that mean? What adjustments might I need to make?
Well, this has been amazing. I've learned so much. It's been wonderful to have this conversation and get lots of tips and trips and just share some of the experiences and some of your wisdom and expertise. So thank you so much for agreeing to come and do this with us. It's been really good.
We've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, hope we haven't talked too much.
There we are. Thank you to Nigel and Sue for joining us. It was really good. What did you make of all that, Emma?
It was a lot of information, but my main one, I think I'm going to try and do simple steps. Mm-hmm. So the main one I'm taking away currently is the saying thank you instead of please after requesting something, because I thought that was really clever and a simple one for me to kind of remember in the moment.
I think I really took away that sense of not overloading them with different words and language. I think we often fall into that trap of trying to say things in different ways and repeating
or
ourselves.
Over-explaining why they should do something.
And just giving them some space to process. I think that's a really good reminder that is a really good habit to try and get into. Yeah, but like you say, I feel like you could listen to that over and over again because there's quite a lot of information to digest from that.
Because I remember at the time I kept going, that's a really good idea. That's a good idea.
And we could have talked for ages, really, and jumped in and explored all those topics, but we wanted to let them talk and share some of their wisdom, and really good. And thank you for listening and being part of it this week, and I hope it's been valuable and good. A bit of a different episode, a special guest bonus thingamabob.
It's nice for us to have guests on.
Oh, we love a guest. Yep. If you'd like to be a guest, get in touch. We're always open to guests.
I mean, yeah, but you...
I'm open to can of worms now.
We're not just any guest.
Yeah. Whoever you are. Anyone can be a guest. I don't think we'll be inundated.
That's true.
Yeah. But genuinely, if you listen along to this regularly and would like to
if
be
you've
part
got
of the
kids.
conversation.
I mean, if you happen to listen to this and you don't know
That's
how
true.
to
If you're not part of,
parenting,
the actual... good point, yeah.
then maybe it might not be that interesting an episode.
Anyway, this has been Don't Wake the Baby here in the blanket fort in the cozy corner of the internet. That's what this is.
That's where we are.
This is what you know us from. Be gone. Goodbye. We'll hear you next time. Have a nice life.
Can you tell we haven't eaten? It's getting to lunchtime and we're both crashing a bit.
God bless. Sleep well.
Don't wake the baby.
Bye.